Hello everyone, welcome to Coaster Hour, and today I'm going to rank the top 30 coasters I've ever ridden from 30 to 16. And then in the next video, I'll rank them from 15 to 1. Yes, I know I already made a top 10 list earlier in the year, but since I released that list, I've gotten the chance to visit Cedar Point, and I have also revisited many of the California parks. And because of that, my opinions on certain coasters has definitely changed, so I thought since it was the end of the year, I should make another countdown before the year ends. And before I get into this video, I will mention that I have ridden 94 coasters at this point, which I know a lot of you were kind of wondering how many I've ridden, so that is the amount of coasters I've ridden as of now. So with that said, let's get right into the countdown. At number 30, I have Gemini, the Aero Hybrid Coaster at Cedar Point, and to me, Gemini is just a really fun ride. For being built in 1978, Gemini still runs pretty smoothly and has some great airtime moments as well as a nice turnaround at the end, which is decently intense. Gemini doesn't really have an amazing layout or great pacing, which keeps it from being higher on the list, but as it is, Gemini is a great coaster that I find gives a very enjoyable ride experience. Flight Deck, the B&M invert at California's Great America, comes in next, and this inverted coaster, while being one of the older ones, still provides a very intense but fun experience that just feels a little too short. This year though, I will say that Flight Deck seemed quite a bit rougher than what I had remembered, and because of that, it fell a bit. But don't get me wrong, I still really like Flight Deck, and my favorite elements on this ride are the Zero G roll, the corkscrew over the lake, and the final helix, which also takes place over the lake, and is quite powerful. If you like intense rides, like me, you can never go wrong with Flight Deck. Yet another B&M creation comes in at number 28, and this is Gatekeeper, which is a B&M wing coaster, which means that you sit on the outside of the track, and this ride has some great elements, such as the wing over drop, and the two inversions that interact with the keyholes. This coaster is actually pretty graceful as well, and you take time going through the elements, which is nice, and overall, I do think that this is a great coaster, and one you should definitely ride when you are at Cedar Point. Number 27 is Comet at HersheyPark, and this is a PTC wooden coaster that was originally built in 1946. Comet is still a pretty smooth ride, especially for its age, and I really enjoyed the great airtime moments this ride had to offer, and I also found the location of the coaster to be awesome, as you go right by Super Duper Looper and Skyrush multiple times. I sadly only got to ride Comet once, and to be honest, had I ridden it more times, I think it could have been higher on the list, but I will still highly recommend you ride Comet if you are ever at HersheyPark. Six Flags Discovery Kingdom may not be one of my favorite parks, but I will admit that they have some pretty awesome coasters, and Medusa is definitely one of them. From the unexpectedly awesome first drop to the bizarre sea serpent roll, this B&M floorless gives a ride experience that is very intense, yet different from all of the other B&M loopers I've ridden. My favorite row on Medusa is the back row, as you get absolutely whipped through the inversions. But the front row is also very fun, as you really are able to feel the wind in your face, so either way, you'll get a great ride experience on Medusa. SeaWorld San Diego is home to Manta, my all-time favorite family coaster, and it is coming in at number 25. What makes this mock multi-launch coaster so great is that it actually has some great airtime and decent forces, which is pretty unusual for a family coaster, and the pacing is also really solid. You feel like you are moving pretty fast even though this coaster's top speed is only 43 miles per hour. Combine that with some pretty solid theming and rock work, and also of course the first launch, it's a bit of a show, which is really cool, and you have a ride that is really the full experience. Riddlers Revenge is widely regarded as the best B&M stand-up coaster, and while I haven't been able to ride many stand-up coasters, I definitely can see why people think this coaster is so great. Riddler's Revenge is absolute non-stop action, and you just fly from inversion to inversion. My personal favorite elements are the dive loops and the airtime hill after the brake run. This ride also has some of the shortest lines of any of the major coasters at Magic Mountain, which is also a nice plus when you're trying to avoid waiting in long lines all day. Full Throttle is a short but fun ride, and it comes in at number 23. The first launch on this ride is pretty intense, but it's a huge vertical loop that is the true highlight moment of the ride. You feel like you're hanging upside down forever, and since this ride has lap bars, you also think that you're going to fall out during this loop, which is crazy. Unfortunately, the rest of the ride isn't nearly as great as a vertical loop, but the second inversion is fun to go through, and if you are lucky, you will get some airtime going over the top hat element. So overall, this is a short but great ride. Number 22 on my list is Hang Time, the Gerstlauer Infinity Coaster at Knott's Berry Farm, and what I like about this ride is that you have a lot of cool elements that feel very different from one another. The vertical lift is awesome and is a great way to start the ride experience, and the first drop is also pretty great as you drop at a 96-degree angle, which is nuts. The inversions are also pretty fun, though I wouldn't say any of them gave outstanding hang time, which was a little disappointing, but the two airtime hills were pretty strong, which made up for that. I honestly think that this coaster is pretty overrated, but even with that, I still definitely think that this is a great new addition for Knott's Berry Farm. The original Premier Skyrocket 2, and the only one I've ridden, Superman Ultimate Flight, comes in next, and it gives one heck of a ride. I experienced some nice ejector airtime going over the top, and some great hang time going through the inline twist. The next few moments afterward are also very intense, and you feel some good positive G's when traversing the layout. I will say though that to get the best possible experience, right in the front row, you get the best view of what is going on and a pretty smooth ride. Where the back was quite rattly, but no matter what row you ride in, you're in for a really cool experience. I love to ride classic wooden coasters, and so it shouldn't surprise you too much that I have the Giant Dipper at the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk in my top 20. Opening in 1924, Giant Dipper is by far the oldest coaster I have ever ridden, and it is bumpy for sure, but to be honest, the roughness of this ride isn't anything to turn away from and actually adds to an older ride like the Giant Dipper. The view from the top of the lift hill is also great, and this coaster still provides some great airtime and strong lateral forces during its turns. My favorite row is the front, as I find the airtime to be the best there, and you do feel the wind more. And while Giant Dipper doesn't have the most original layout, the ride experience it gives is still very satisfying. Going from a classic wooden coaster to a more modern one, we go to Hershey and find Lightning Racer, the GCI racing wooden coaster, at number 19. The racing aspect of this coaster is pretty awesome, and I definitely was rooting for my train to get to the finish line before the other train, which was awesome, and when I rode Lightning Racer, I got a rain ride, which added to the overall fun of the ride, for me at least. Lightning Racer admittedly though wasn't really that intense, but the solid airtime moments and racing interaction more than made up for it, and Lightning Racer is definitely a coaster I cannot wait to re-ride on my next visit to HersheyPark. It may have taken a while, but our first Intamin coaster makes the list, and it is Fahrenheit at HersheyPark. This coaster, in my opinion, is very similar to Hang Time, the coaster I mentioned earlier, but for me, I think Fahrenheit has superior pacing, inversions, airtime moments, and a better first drop even though there's not a holding brake. I found this ride to be more fun than intense, so if you're expecting a really intense ride out of Fahrenheit, you may be disappointed, but for me, I'm perfectly fine with a ride that isn't that forceful, as long as it has good elements, and Fahrenheit more than delivers in that aspect. Raptor at Cedar Point is my number 17 coaster and my all-time favorite B&M invert I've ridden. Raptor is just so action-packed and blazes right through its inversions, and I really enjoyed the 0G roll and the last few corkscrews especially, but the most intense part of Raptor might just be that final helix, and it is just ridiculously powerful, and definitely is a fantastic finale to an already great and relatively smooth inverted coaster. Millennium Force comes in at number 16, and for me this revolutionary Intamin Giga Coaster was a bit disappointing even though it still delivers an incredible ride experience, at least at night. The 300-foot first drop is definitely among the best I've ever experienced, as you feel like you're falling forever, and you do definitely come out of your seat during this drop. The first overbank is also very intense, and you definitely feel the forces and speed of Millennium Force during this element. After that fantastic opening though, the ride goes through its layout and you feel a great sensation of speed, but other than that, there really isn't another fantastic moment until the speed hill, which delivers great ejector airtime. Millennium Force at night though is where the ride truly is outstanding, as being in the dark really changes up the experience. If you go to Cedar Point, a night ride on Millennium Force is an absolute must. And that is it for part 1 of my top 30 favorite roller coasters. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and stay tuned for part 2 where I rank my top 15 coasters, or depending on when you're watching this, you may be able to just watch part 2 now, so if you can, check it out. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time here on Coaster Hour.